Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Newsnight has learnt that a group of former cabinet ministers is hatching a plan to prove that the Conservative Parliamentary Party would support a moderate Brexit. Justine Greening, Amber Rudd and Damien Green want to show their Prime Minister that she would have sufficient support to face down Brexit hardliners in her cabinet and party, including the Vocal European Research Group led by Jacob Rees-Mogg. The alliance of the former cabinet ministers who supported Remain have decided to act after concluding that it would be impossible to agree a Brexit deal accepted by all wings of the Conservative Parliamentary Party. Nick Watt has brought in the story and is here now to explain to us. Nick.
Well, we saw the pressures on Theresa May earlier this week when Eurosceptics were upset when the Cabinet agreed the so-called backstop solution for Northern Ireland. This is that the UK would remain in some, but not all elements of the customs union after the transition period ends in 2020 if there is not an overall Brexit deal. Now, what I've learnt could change the dynamics of Theresa May's entire approach to the future negotiations with our relationship with the EU. And what these three former cabinet ministers are planning to effectively say to the Prime Minister is, you have the numbers in Parliament to face down, as you were saying, the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg. And so they're saying, look, Prime Minister, you can break away from your slowly approach where you seek consensus across the entire parliamentary party. Now, some members of this group have been holding talks with Jacob Rees-Mogg, and they've decided that there is simply no common ground because they believe that he's rather too attracted to this idea of having no deal with the EU.
So what is your sense now, Nick, of what's actually going on beneath the scene?
Well, what I've learned is that these former ministers do have at least one supporter in very high places. I'm told by, according to one witness, that at a recent meeting of the Brexit Cabinet Subcommittee, Julian Smith, who is the chief whip, basically turned to those 11 ministers and he said, get real, look at the numbers in Parliament. Now, it's important to say that this group that we're talking about, these former ministers, are Remainers, but they do have some Leavers. I've spoken to some Leave supporters who support them. The ERG, the European Research Group, that's the Jacob Rees-Mogg group, I spoke to them tonight. They are incredibly relaxed about this, expecting this sort of thing. And their view is that there are 7 Brexit-supporting Conservative MPs who are not in their group who have said that if Theresa May does a deal that they do not like, they will stop supporting her, and so her parliamentary majority would go. So, look, I've been looking at the thinking of these former ministers. For the best part of 30 years, the Tories' two warring factions have been working in isolation to build their own blueprints for Britain's place in Europe. Now, as Theresa May stands on the edge of a momentous decision that will shape Brexit, change may be in sight. Newsnight has learnt that some Remainers and Brexiteers are talking of compromise.
That question of how we leave is incredibly important, and why we need a pragmatic Brexit that preserves that close economic partnership whilst leaving political institutions.
The key players include the former cabinet ministers Justine Greening, Amber Rudd and Damien Green. These former Remain supporters know their work will be undermined if it's seen as one-sided, and so they are teaming up with Leave supporters. The aim? To marginalise the outliers at either end of the Remain and Leave spectrum. They now see no chance of finding common ground with the likes of Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg, and if Boris Johnson walked out of the cabinet, so be it. The arch-Remainer Dominic Grieve is also in the sights of some.
As the two sides try to bridge the gap, one Tory grandee told me their work should be seen as a dive for the middle ground with one very simple aim: to show the centre of gravity lies with Leavers and Remainers who are prepared to compromise. And that is designed to give Theresa May the space to cut a deal without the support of Jacob Rees-Mogg and possibly even some members of her cabinet.
my constituents don't like cabinet ministers openly rubbishing the plans of the Prime Minister in public. They want a sensible and considered compromise, and I think those that are arguing from an ideological perspective are in the wrong place compared to the vast majority of us in Westminster.
And these middle ground Tories believe they have the numbers in Parliament to reject no deal with the EU. Such a vote is probably unlikely, but it is shaping boundaries. If you add up most opposition MPs and over 100 Tory MPs, they would have at least 400 MPs, well over the 322 needed to secure a majority. Whilst on the other side, this group believes Jacob Rees-Mogg commands between 30 to 75 Tory MPs, enough for the 48 votes to trigger a vote of confidence in Theresa May, but not the 159 votes needed to unseat her.
I would guess that the vast majority of Conservative MPs want us to have a Brexit that implements the referendum result properly, in other words, that restores sovereign control, but that also provides for the closest relationship with our European neighbours.
But some Leave supporters open to compromise warn that no deal may be unavoidable.
No deal is plainly better than a bad deal. That's the statement of the obvious. When Theresa May says that, it's difficult to disagree. You know, imagine that you were buying a car and you said to the car dealer, I'm definitely going to walk out of this showroom with your vehicle. Now let's sit down and haggle about the price. I mean, that would be a ridiculous position. So plainly, you have to have a bottom line. That said, we shouldn't be aiming at that. We want to have successful, prosperous neighbours. We want the departure terms to be as beneficial as possible to them as well as to us. And we're going to have our history and our geography and our economy dictated. We're going to have a continuing relationship with the EU.
Theresa May has always thought that bridging the divide in her party would deliver the most durable Brexit. But as the final countdown begins, some allies are warning that for a deal to fall into place, the Prime Minister will need to cut free from noisy outliers in her party.
That was Nick Watt.